In 1976, a Senate committee opened files on CIA contacts inside American newsrooms. Pages listed names and payments. The full list of names was never made public. The operation, later called Mockingbird, was said to place reporters on agency payrolls. Official cables show only scattered relationships. No central ledger appears. Frank Wisner ran the agency's early propaganda branch after World War II. He cultivated editors and publishers in New York and Washington. Records end at the point of direct orders. By the early 1960s, the agency wiretapped 2 columnists under a project also labeled Mockingbird. The tap logs survive. Their purpose remains unexplained. Journalists traveled under agency cover. Some filed intelligence reports alongside news copy. The committee transcript stops before naming every outlet involved. Carl Bernstein later counted more than 400 alleged assets. His sources were former officers. Agency leadership neither confirmed nor denied the total. In 1977, Director Stansfield Turner issued new rules. Journalists were off-limits for recruitment. The directive left prior arrangements unaddressed. Years later, the Family Jewels compilation listed the 1963 wiretap but omitted any larger media network. The absence of further pages raised fresh questions. The legend grew larger than the files. The files still proved more contact than officials had admitted. What the remaining redactions conceal is unknown. Frank Wisner had overseen the early effort to place assets inside newsrooms. Cables from the 1950s described meetings with bureau chiefs who agreed to run stories without attribution. The cables carried no program name. Later investigators found the signatures but no central ledger. The first page of one file ended mid-sentence. By 1963, the wiretap operation targeted 2 columnists whose phones were monitored for leaks. The request carried the code name Mockingbird yet described only the tap. No broader directive appeared in the same folder. The next page had been withdrawn. Why that page alone disappeared remained unexplained. Church committee staff later traced dozens of additional contacts across major outlets. Journalists received stipends or travel help in exchange for access. The committee report listed the relationships but withheld most names. A single footnote stated further records existed elsewhere. The footnote led nowhere. Bernstein obtained separate CIA lists that named more than 400 individuals. His article printed the figure without the original documents. Agency officials neither confirmed nor denied the count. The lists themselves stayed classified for decades. Their present location is still not publicly recorded. Director Turner issued the 1977 restriction after the committee findings surfaced. The order barred paid relationships with accredited correspondents. It left unpaid sources and foreign stringers unaddressed. Internal memos from the same year noted the change would be reviewed annually. The review logs have not been released. Declassified cables showed some editors had rejected the overtures outright. Others demanded written assurances that stories would remain unattributed. The rejections were filed separately from the acceptances. The separation kept the full picture fragmented. No single memo ever assembled both sets. The absence of a formal charter allowed officials to claim no program existed. Yet the same officials maintained the contacts through informal channels. The distinction between program and practice was never clarified on paper. The next folder in the archive contained only blank withdrawal sheets. One cable from 1954 mentioned coordination with a European wire service. The service later became the subject of separate inquiries in the 1970s. The cable referenced earlier guidance that was not attached. The referenced guidance has not surfaced in any release. Its content is therefore unknown. The pattern of partial disclosure continued through multiple administrations. Each release acknowledged contact while omitting scope. The omissions preserved the legend without settling its limits. What the remaining redactions still conceal is unknown. A 1963 internal order authorized wiretaps on 2 Washington columnists. The order listed their home and office lines. Transcripts moved through the Office of Security. No distribution list survives. The columnists never learned of the taps. The order cited a standing directive that remains classified. What that directive actually required is unknown. The same files show payments to stringers at major papers. Receipts list travel and expenses only. No editorial instructions appear. One stringer filed from Southeast Asia in 1965. His dispatches matched agency assessments on several points. Editors later removed his byline from the archive. The reason for removal is not recorded. Church committee investigators requested all media files in 1975. The agency released 400 pages. Another 700 pages stayed sealed under national security. Committee staff noted the pattern but could not compel further release. The withheld pages concerned ongoing relationships. Their current status is unknown. Bernstein's 1977 reporting identified more than 400 names. Agency records confirm fewer than 50 formal contracts. The difference between the two figures was never reconciled in public. Bernstein cited former officers who declined to be named. Those officers have not been located in later releases. The gap persists. One European bureau chief received monthly stipends through a front foundation. Bank records end in 1972. After that date the foundation dissolved. The bureau chief continued filing until 1976. No further payments appear. Whether another channel replaced the first remains unconfirmed. A 1976 cable from Langley instructed stations to end active recruitment of reporters. The cable carried an exception for existing assets. Those assets were not listed by name. Stations acknowledged receipt. Follow-up cables confirming compliance have not been released. Compliance itself is therefore unverified. Director Turner's public statement in 1977 banned paid relationships. Internal memos from the same month discuss review of existing ties. The memos end without a final decision log. Several stations continue to report occasional contact. The distinction between contact and relationship was left undefined. Declassified entries refer to one domestic media executive who met case officers monthly. Meeting locations rotated between hotels. No minutes were kept. The executive died in 1984. His widow declined interview requests. The content of those meetings is absent from the record. Each release since 1976 has repeated the same phrasing: contacts existed but were limited. The word limited is never quantified. Later reviews cite the same documents without adding numbers. The absence of a final tally leaves the original legend intact. The actual scale stays unresolved. In 1977 the Church Committee released its findings on agency contacts inside newsrooms. The report confirmed recurring meetings but supplied no roster of participants. Bernstein's separate article listed names drawn from internal memos. Committee volumes withheld equivalent lists. The two records still diverge on every major count. Why was one set of documents released while the other stayed sealed? Project Mockingbird appears in the 2007 Family Jewels release as a 1963 wiretap operation. 2 Washington columnists were targeted for 3 months. The file ends without further distribution of the transcripts. No connection to broader media recruitment is recorded. The name that once suggested nationwide control now points only to a narrow eavesdropping effort. What happened to the rest of the file? Director Stansfield Turner issued formal orders in 1977 restricting use of journalists. The directive required headquarters approval for any new contact. Existing relationships were allowed to continue under the same vague wording used since 1967. No later audit checked compliance. The order remains the final official statement on the subject. Its enforcement was never examined. Declassified cables mention one domestic executive who met case officers on a monthly schedule. Locations changed between hotels. No minutes survive. The executive died in 1984. His widow refused all requests for comment. The substance of those conversations is absent from every release. The pattern repeats across later document batches. Every subsequent review cites the same limited phrasing. Contacts existed. They were confined. The word limited appears without definition or total. Later historians quote the sentence unchanged. No new ledger has surfaced to replace the missing count. The original estimate of several hundred therefore stands unchallenged by primary sources. The legend of a single program called Operation Mockingbird therefore rests on two separate facts. The Church Committee proved relationships existed. The family jewels proved the code name referred only to a wiretap. Everything else remains an inference drawn from silence. The record refuses to close the distance between those 2 points. Public statements after 1977 continue to describe the relationships as historical. Internal routing slips from the 1980s still reference ongoing media assets. The contradiction sits inside the same agency archive. No explanation reconciles the two sets of papers. The discrepancy has never been addressed in any declassification review. The files that reach the public therefore confirm a narrower version of the original claim. Relationships existed. They were managed. Their full extent was never recorded in one place. The absence of that single ledger keeps the larger story alive in every new release. The record stops short of either full confirmation or full denial. No final accounting of journalists or executives has appeared in any subsequent release. The question of scale therefore remains exactly where the Church Committee left it in 1976. How many names were deliberately kept from the tally that still does not exist?